Ladies, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go all in on the Chinese, the Koreans, Pakistanis, Indians, Japanese, and several other groups of people who work as a coalition amongst themselves that are from the societies that they live in. But more specifically, the Chinese / Chinese Filipinos that are basically taking over the stores in the Philippines, including the food stores and the shopping malls. So I'm going to also give you some information about the way they took over most of the the commercial waterfront properties in both the Great Lakes area of the United States, the Florida toll roads, and how that works. So let's just start with the Philippines, and let's start how it's done. It's done in a relatively, I don't know how, it's not nefarious, it's legal, but it's done in the following, the following manner. Okay, so I will give you a for instance of the hotels that are being built in ALONA Beach. Most of the new hotels and large food dispensaries are owned by either Korean or Chinese. They fund these projects from the ground up. So what they'll do, if there's a prime piece of real estate that they want, they'll go in and offer a Filipino establishment whatever the value of the property is plus. Now, when I say plus, let's say the value is worth, we're going to use dollars, American dollars. The value of the property is worth $100,000. And then I'm going to give you how it works in America the same way. So the store's worth $100,000, and the Filipino man gets there at 5 o'clock in the morning and works till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because the industrious Filipinos work very hard and very long hours. And it's usually a family establishment. So they offer the Filipino man $100,000, and he says, no, I don't want to sell that property. And then they'll offer the man $120,000. And they will keep going up until the Filipino man says, okay, with the addendum that the Filipino man's name stays on the establishment, but the Chinese will run the business, which allows the Filipino some free time to enjoy his family and friends. So then the Chinese will come in and revamp the store. However, in addition, they'll put up Chinese signage. Now, this works the same way in the Philippines with the Koreans. And of course, the Filipino people own 60% of the businesses, but they're there by de facto, let's say, de facto. They run the store de facto, the Chinese. And the Chinese are much more efficient at doing what most people in the world do. They're very hardworking, they're very industrious, and they work long hours. So now the store is there, and the Chinese will just raise the store to the ground. And they'll build a new building, and they'll bring workers from China itself to build the building. Now, these Chinese workers are legal. They come in with legal work permits, and they come in a group of men that are construction workers. But there's an addendum to that as well. Every one of the Chinese workers knows every aspect of the job, However, there is just one boss. So I will explain how one business that I know, that the dive resort, was owned by a Filipino man, and he started building a hotel on the property. And the hotel was going to be, I think, 74 rooms at the time. And this goes back about three and a half years maximum. And he put the foundation, he put about 40 columns in for the foundations and started putting the beam boxes in. However, a Chinese corporation rented one of this man's properties from him. They said to him, we will buy the property from you, basically rent it for 50 years or whatever the longest lease is, but we're going to build 134 rooms. So whatever the monies that they worked out, it was agreeable. And the Chinese company came in with 23 men from China, 23 construction workers from China. And they did in 6 months what 50 Filipinos couldn't do in 3 years. They built, first of all, they removed all of the 40 columns and footings that were in that job site. They brought in absolutely, one of the biggest excavators I ever saw. And they brought it in with it came in with a 1-yard bucket and a jackhammer on it. So they removed the footings. They put them in a huge pile. And we're talking about 150, 200 yards of concrete in a huge pile. And that jackhammer went to work on that pile. And it turned the concrete into rubble, and it turned the rebar into twisted pieces of metal that in America, they would just pick it up with a magnet or a clamshell, put it in a truck and sell it as scrap. But the Chinese people didn't do that. No, they got blocks of coconut trees that were on the backside of the property, like stumps, like 30-inch stumps. And they put those all over the property, and each piece of rebar was hammered down into a straight product, rolled on a flat surface to where it was almost perfectly flat. While the demolition of the concrete was being done, 23 men were straightening out rebar. Now, I know that sounds hard to believe, but they straightened out several tons of rebar. Then the trucks, containers. And inside the containers were rebar benders, hydraulic rebar benders, tamping machines for the small areas that the big tampers couldn't get to. And these guys started bending rebar just 10 days after the demolition began, or the straightened out rebar. And they worked 14, 15, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, and on Sunday, 3 hours or 4 hours a day. And then I guess they relaxed, like whatever. They don't speak English, but I learned to communicate with them while I was doing some videos. And I was allowed to do the videos because I got permission from the contractor himself. So they are industrious, and they do work more efficiently, faster, and smarter than even the American construction workers that I work with, either in the union or in my business. So that's one way that they are more efficient and better at what they do. So the bottom line is that 23 men put probably almost 100 columns with an 8-foot by 8-foot footing, whereas the Filipino contractor before that had 40 columns with a 4-foot by 4-foot footing, only 18 inches thick. The Chinese contractor came in and put over 100 with 12 by 12 footings, anywhere from 8 by 8 to 12 by 12, and 24 inches plus thick. And that's where they started their foundations. Then they went up. Every farm was built by Chinese construction workers using table saws, not hand saws. The Filipino tradition is to use a hand saw to cut a piece of 3/4-inch laminated plywood, which takes about 20 minutes to cut through a 3/4-inch laminated plywood. The Chinese people brought in 12-inch table saws. They used nail guns instead of hammers and nails. They even had a T50 nail gun, which is a pneumatic air gun that shoots T50 nails up to 2 inches thick, which it's like a very hard staple. And you shoot it into the plywood and it will go into concrete, similar to a nail gun that goes into wood, but it works with concrete. Hello, Flying Circus. So in 6 months, 23 men did all the footings, all the beam boxes, all the floors, and up 4 floors for 134 rooms. It would have took 23 Filipino men, it might have taken them 3 or 4 years. Then those Chinese workers went back to China. And what happened next was the boss, the Chinese boss, and normally Filipinos are not run by foreigners, but this foreigner, Chinese boss, this guy was just a genius at what he did. He was unbelievable. He was running 23 men like a fine oiled machine. He was in charge of the crew, and instead of the walls going up with 1/2 inch, 3/4, 1.25 inch, 2 inch more, every wall went up perfectly level, plumb, vertically plumb, and perfectly level horizontal. Every cement block was put in with a 1/2 to 5/8 inch mortar joint. And not every third hollow of the block was filled up, but every second hollow of the block, which eliminated thousands and thousands of hours of stucco work because the plumb. Now they don't have to go from 1 inch on the bottom to a 1/4 inch on top. And it was amazing because I saw the same crew do this same work very haphazard 6 years ago. So they're more efficient, they work harder, they work smarter. How do they take over the stores and the businesses themselves? How did they get the property? Well, let me tell you how that works. When a Filipino has a business that's worth $100,000 and the Chinese person wants to take over the business, the money will be offered for the value of the business. If the Filipino takes it, that's fine. But they will keep going up incrementally until the Filipino says yes, which makes it legal. There's no coercion. They just eventually, the Filipino says, well, this is a good deal for me. I can retire or I can still own part of the business. This happened to my mother's boss in America. So I'll give you what the store was worth and I'll give you what they paid for it. So Murray Cohen and Mary and Mildred Cohen, Cohen, owned 2 clothes stores, three doors off Jamaica, 3 doors off Woodhaven Boulevard on Jamaica Avenue. And Chinese people wanted to buy it. And Mary didn't want to sell it. And the business was worth $225,000. So they offered him $225,000, then $250,000, then $300,000. Eventually, they offered him $500,000 for each store, $1 million, and cash, not checks. And they gave him 2 years to vacate the premises. So they gave him double what the store was worth, gave him 2 years to get rid of his inventory or do whatever he wanted, and Murray retired to Florida. Now, where did they get the money from? I'll tell you how they get the money. Well, I can tell you one way, but you could figure it out. It's made from green things and not marijuana. So, and eventually it ends up white. So that's one way. Second way is, what they do is, as a legitimate example, next door, now the two clothing stores, if there's anything on the internet, one was named Mildred and Murray's, and one was just named Murray's. They were a low-end clothier and a middle to high-end clothier next door to each other. They were husband and wife. The husband and wife ran both stores, but the husband was in one store and the wife was in the other. So my mom worked for these people for 23 years, I believe, maybe 20 hours a week. And next door, 23 years, just right after my mom started working there was an Italian vegetable stand, because Jamaica Avenue used to be mostly Italians and Jews and Germans. In the Italian vegetable stand, the Chinese people came in and offered him money for the vegetable stand, but he didn't want to sell. Now, I'm not going to mention his name because he came from where I grew up. And eventually they offered him enough money to sell the store. So Chinese people took over the store. This is going back to like 1971, maybe 72. I was still in high school. So what the Chinese did was they brought in, and this is how they are so proficient at what they do. And one way they get their money. But I'm going to tell you where that $1 million came from Murray to buy Murray and Mildred stores also. It's the same thing if they want to buy a 7-Eleven, a candy store, a movie theater, doesn't matter. They don't borrow from banks. The money is given to them by what is called a cooperation. So the Chinese people that took over the vegetable stand didn't do much renovation, but they ran it efficiently. And they ran it in a manner that was equal to or more superior to the Italian vegetables. And you got to remember, back in the 70s, most of the vegetable markets, the Bronx Terminal Market and the Brooklyn Terminal Market, were all Italians. So they would nothing but the freshest vegetables, no rotting vegetables, nothing but the highest quality vegetables were sold there. And they took over the entire, there were 2 more vegetable stands within 2 blocks. They took over most of the business. How did they do that? They had better vegetables and they had cleaner vegetables, and the place was kept immaculate. There were about 8 Chinese people working in the store, and then they had buyers going all over the city to get the freshest fruits and vegetables from all over the world. So they had a bigger display. They had cleaner and more fresher vegetables, and they sold those vegetables for less money than the Italians could buy them for, because they bought in bulk. And the way they did that was the labor that they had in the store. Let's say there was the husband and the wife and 8 laborers, plus whoever ran around and picked up the vegetables. The laborers don't get paid. They get a pittance amount of money for their daily needs. They get $0 as a paycheck, and they have an unwritten verbal agreement to work in the store for somewhere between 5 and 8 years for no money, 7 days a week, 12, 13, or 14 hours a day. So now the Chinese person who owns the store doesn't pay labor for 10 people. None of the Chinese will make what they do get. In that case, in the basement, there was about somewhere between 30 and 35 Chinese people living in a basement with 1 kitchen and 1 bathroom, and they prepared vegetables down there, and they did their whatever they had to do, to get, they were always clean and neat. So, but basically the man cut out the cost of labor. So at the end of their 5 or 8 year contract, they are offered, if they wish to go back to China with a certain amount of money, or they are offered the opportunity to buy a store of their choosing. During the course of working for the Chinese man and woman, they learn every aspect. They learn the cash register, they learn how to sweep the floors, they learn how to buy the vegetables, and they rotate in their job positions. The same way the Chinese men build the hotels here in the Philippines, they all rotate their job position. Where does the money come from? It doesn't come from a bank. I assure you of that. What happens is, the same way the Chinese restaurant, the Chinese vegetable store owner got his money, he worked for somebody for 5 or 8 years. Then the people who have the money, and when I say have the money, you see movies. What was the name of that? With Mel Gibson, where he went into, you saw a warehouse full of money. Oh, that's how it works. Same thing. Containers, houses, basements, rooms full of money. Just walk in, there's guys with guarding the money, and there's houses, just houses full of money. You open the door to the bedroom, and the money is right to the door. That's it. And they take the money from those houses, storage areas. They don't use banks a lot. And then they give the money to the Chinese vegetable store owner with one agreement. He pays them back as soon as possible, plus 10%. And that's it. His fiduciary responsibility is done. He only has to pay them back plus 10%. Now, when he borrowed that money, he took that with the understanding that that same coalition would give him those 8 or 10 people that he needed to work in his store, and they would be good workers for 5 to 8 years. Once the money is paid back, then the money that he makes from the store is his, but he has to pay that money back from a large percentage of his earnings. He can't go out and start partying and not paying them back right away. They keep tabs on that, and how they do that I won't tell you, but they do. So when the men that worked for the vegetable stand, when they have finished their 5 to 8 year verbal agreement, working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week or more, they also offered the opportunity to go buy any store they want. Doesn't matter. If they want to buy a 7-Eleven, which is mostly Indians, Pakistanis, and Koreans, this is the same way they earn money, the same way they get money. Plus, in addition, for the Arab countries, the Arab Emirate countries, they get oil money. But the other countries have these coalitions where the money is just brought in and given to the people that want to buy a business. So it doesn't matter how much money the store costs. If one of the workers that worked there for 8 years wants to buy another vegetable store, he will go to the store, estimate what the store's worth is with one of the members from the coalition or 2 of the members from the coalition. They'll walk into the store. They'll simply just walk into the store, ask for the owner, and say, we would like to buy your store. If the owner doesn't want to sell it, they'll just increase the price until the owner agrees to sell it. Now, in Murray and Mildred's case, Murray was well into his 60s, and so was Mildred. And they were ready to retire anyway. So it worked out well for Murray. He walked away with $1 million in cash and lived happily ever after. So when the Chinese vegetable worker goes to a location that he wants to buy, he goes there with 1 or 2 members of the coalition, and they in turn estimate the way you estimate what a store can earn is by foot traffic. You stand in front of the store with a counter, and you count how many people go by the store. the same way they used to do at the stadiums when you bought frankfurters or hamburgers. So they estimate the foot traffic, and they stand there for days, and they can estimate by the foot traffic, if you have a good store, about whether or not it's a good investment. So if the guy's investment or the guy's wish or will to want to buy that store is a good investment, they'll start offering the owner money. And when they get to an agreeable price, the owner will sell it. Now, never was Mildred or Mary, they were never threatened to sell the store. But at some point, Mary said, you know, they're offering me $1 million. They might just decide it's easier to not give me money and buy the store from his son or daughter. Now, his son was a very famous TV commercial producer, and his daughter was a doctor. So he didn't need the money, and neither did his son. The son would probably just give the store away. He wanted nothing to do with the store. Neither did the daughter. So that's how they get the money. And in addition, how do the Chinese people make the money back so fast? Well, I told you one way. One way is by them not paying their labor at all, any money except the pittance and food. And they don't eat a lot of food. They'll eat pretty much like Filipinos, huge bowl of rice with one small fish, and whatever, 2 or 3 times a day. The way that they get their money back so fast is that they also make an agreement from the time they're born, basically. They only spend money in a Chinese store. So the Chinese vegetable store owners that worked next door to Mildred and Murray's, for 23 years, my mom worked for that store. Murray and Mildred, my mother and Gertrude, they all bought their vegetables in the Chinese vegetable store because it was good vegetables. But the Chinese people never spent even $1, not $1, in Mildred and Murray's store in 23 years, even though they were right next door, even though they sold low-end clothes. Sometimes, once or twice a year, one of the Chinese workers might meander into the store to look at a price of a shirt or a blouse, and then they'd say hello, and they were very friendly, and then they'd walk out, and they'd walk 10 or 12 blocks to another Chinese store that sold clothes. Now, if there's no Chinese store in the neighborhood that sells clothes, what they'll do is they'll look for a Korean or Pakistani or Indian or Arab store, but they won't spend money in an American store. This way, the coalition of Chinese know that all the money that's being spent by Chinese people will be spent in a Chinese store, therefore increasing the income of a Chinese store first, and then whatever they decide second, but they won't spend money in an American store. Now, I worked in Joe's Pizzeria in the Big Bow Wow for about maybe 5 months. And then I worked at Lenny's Pizzeria and Lenny's Clam Bars in Howard Beach for about 4.5 years on and off. I remember Vinny Cerrone, Ceroni. Vinny Cerrone was the owner. His son Joe eventually took it over with with Louie and another man. And we were in the kitchen, and Vinny's outside, everybody outside, out of the kitchen, not outside the building. Everybody, come and take a look at this. And we all stood behind the pizza counter next to the cash register. He said, look over there. What do you see? I'd say nothing. He says, there's 2 Chinese people over there. They bought a slice of pizza. They split it and 1 soda, because he had a slice and a soda on sale. At this time, 1973, a slice and a soda was like 50 cents. They bought 1 slice, cut it in half, used 2 plates, and got 2. He goes, you're never going to see this again. That's stuck in my head for all these years. They never we never saw another Chinese person in the pizzeria. I'm not saying they didn't come in or when I was in the back, but he made a point to say that. He goes, those people, he knew this back in 1973. He said, those people will come to this country and never spend $1 in an Italian restaurant. But we order Chinese food 3 times a week for the staff. How many thousands and thousands and thousands of Chinese restaurant meals have you ordered takeout or sat down in a Chinese restaurant? When have you ever seen an entire Chinese family walk into a Lenny's Pizzeria or Lenny's Clambo? Never. Never happened. For the 4.5 years that I worked there, I saw that one Chinese couple split a pie, used 2 plates, and used 2 cups to split the soda. That was it. That's how they make their money. And now I'm going to read the comments, and then I'm going to go to the next segment of my notes about ALONA Beach. Mr. Willis, welcome to the machine. Michael McFarland, $5 to $7 a day. In America, that's correct. Minimum pay, that's what they'll get. They won't get a real wage. They'll get a pittance so that they can buy food. Now, I'm going to just start with Digger. Okay, Digger 2.0. Okay, I'm going to give you the box. I'm going to show you the box. I'll show you the name of Digger to prove that nothing is made in America. The Chinese people took over the manufacturing. Thanks to Clinton and Bush and the NAFTA, thanks to all of those politicians going back to Johnson, they sold America out to the Chinese industrial machine. They sold us out. What does America manufacture? Nothing. You know, okay, so let's just start with Digger. Digger 2.0 is a rubber doll with some lights on the bottom, which allows him to walk upside down on the bottom of the flat earth. He can also walk on the top of the bottom of the flat earth. And I will tell you one thing, that one day you will find out en masse that the earth is flat. Water seeks its own level. Gyroscopes keep a submarine flat on a flat plane. They never vary. And if the sun was 93 million miles away and the earth rotated 1,000 miles, which is what they say changes the temperature in the tropics to cooler and warmer, how would energy coming from 93 million miles away create summer temperatures, and then the earth shifts 1,000 miles, and then you have 100-degree temperature variation? It doesn't make any sense. Neither does anything about the ball earth, globular earth. But that's a bunch of nonsense. One day you'll find it. And before the Vatican, the Jesuits, the Masons, the Illuminati, before they took over the church, and they run the church. Basically, the Vatican is a giant Jesuit organization. But before they took it over to destroy the concept of God. Now, I don't believe in this God entity building the earth as a stationary object. But I do believe that it is stationary and something God-like did all of this. And there's so much more. But today's dissertation is about Chinese products. So Digger, he was made in China. Digger's shoes were made in China. Digger's bippy was made in China. Even Digger's nappy was made in China. His glasses were made in China. His hair. This was all produced in China. And to show you a little bit more evidence of that, I will also show you the back of the box. Made in China, and then it's in French, fabricated in China. So this doll listed for $36. I don't know what it costs to build this doll, but let me let me give you an idea of how much money and how Chinese people make so much money. I'm going to have to get my mouse. So let me just check my notes for something. I haven't been reading from my notes. I have how the hotels are built. Yep. Got it faster, smarter. Yep. Work longer hours. Yep. Work for 8 years. Yep. Build buildings in 6 months that Filipinos cannot build in 4 years. Yep. 15 hours a day. Yep. Receive no money. Yep. Then they can apply for no interest loan from the coalition. Yep. Loan to be given in cash with a 10%. Only pay back 10%. The loan plus 10%. Yep. They pay back the principal. Yep. Fact is how they earn money. Yep. Okay. They only go to stores that Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Pakistani, and the like. Same thing with Greek Orthodox and the Arab Emirate countries, the people that own those stores. Basically, there's different groups of people that own different kinds of stores. Gas stations are typically owned by the Arab oil-rich countries or members of their family. Korean, Turkish, yep, dive gear. That's where I was headed, dive gear. So let me show you something. Yep, come on, get over here. Okay, this is just one dive mask. This is a decor dive mask. I showed this to you in many live streams. Dennis Adams, welcome to the machine, my friend. Welcome. Thanks for those birthday videos you made for me. Anybody wants to see how to burn acrimonious coal or 2 different types of coal for coal stove? Dennis is an expert on coal stoves, how to stoke a stove, how to burn coal, where to buy it, how much it's worth, how to get it into your house, how to build a chute for the coal to get it into your house. And he's also an expert at working with metal and wood. So Dennis has a great channel, Dennis Adam. If you're not subscribed, please do so. Thank you again for those. Dennis made me a happy birthday video where Dennis described real men walk backwards. And I have a series of videos coming up, real men. Not only do real men like Dennis and myself, Scott, Warren, many others of my other personal friends, not only do we own tools, but we use them. That's what real men do. But I have a video coming up, real men go scuba diving with Mr. Obama, where I take Mr. Obama and I bring him down into about 23 meters of water maximum. That day, that was where the bottom was. And Mr. Obama, he sits on the fire coral and he plays inside the fire coral. He goes inside, under, around. Mr. Obama likes a little bit of fire coral when he's diving. That's the truth. Now, this mask in 19, it could have been 79, but it was definitely 1980. I got certified in 1980. This mask has what is called silicone rubber. Now, we make silicone rubber here in America. We did at the time. But the mask is made in China. In fact, for $135, that's ridiculous. First of all, it's absurd. In $1980, $135. You could buy, in 1980, you could buy a decent bicycle with 2 rubber tires, 18 speeds, 2 sets of handle, brakes, brake pads, water bottle holder, a bicycle seat with springs, aluminum rims. For $135, you could have bought an entire high-end, not a high, middle-end bike. But this mask was $135. Now, why was it so expensive? Because no other company in the world made masks. You could go into Kmart and buy some cheap rubber masks that were made in Pakistan or Afghanistan or wherever they made these cheap rubber masks. But if you want to buy a good mask, you had to buy it from China. There were no other stores. There were no other options. So they could charge you whatever they want. And they did. Now, this mask lasted 40 years. So it really was a good investment. However, this mask today, you can't, the prices never changed. It's still $135. Now it's like $149. However, if you want to buy it in the Philippines, you have to pay 100% import fee. So this mask is now, well, it's not quite double. They might have some sort of deal with China, but they don't have that deal with America. So you can buy this mask for 12,000 pesos, which is $220. So it's not quite double. But you'd be hard-pressed to find a three-panel Dakar mask. Now, this I just find amazing. So I'm going to tell you what it costs to make this mask in 1980 and what it costs to make the mask now. The dive shop owner, Ed and Jean Tiedeman's Dive Shop Center in Levittown, Long Island. That's where I got certified. Tiedeman's Dive Center in Levittown. He said that these masks cost about $9 to put on his shelf. That's what it would cost to put them on the shelf, to manufacture it, put it in a shipping container from China, put it in a box, put it in a shipping container, and truck it to his store. It cost about $9. The rest was just basically profit and advertising. The same thing is true today. These masks they may cost less than $9 to get to the shelf. Now, this snorkel has to be 25 or 30 years old, and I paid $20 for it. And this is made in China. But if you want to buy this snorkel in the Philippines or this quality silica, you could see how old it is because the silicone is starting to yellow. Okay, starting to get brown. But it lasted 25 years. When I bought a pair of, so in America, this is about $20, $25. But here, the snorkel is $42. Now, if you want to buy fins in the Philippines, I only saw Cressy, which are, I think, Italian fins, and the rest of them were some brand I didn't know. Fins start at roughly $175. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. Fins weigh about 2 kilos at best. So you're paying $175 for 2 kilos of rubber. Do you know how much rubber you get for a truck? You can buy a truck tire for $175, shipped from China. Truck tires are made in China mostly as well. You can buy a bicycle. You can buy for instance, for the price of this mask, $220, you can buy a single stage 220 volt 135 psi air compressor with a 50-foot hose, and of course it has an electrical plug with a pressure gauge and sensors. So for $225, you get roughly 200 pounds of compressor pump, electrical motor, cable for the electric, and 50-foot air hose for $220. Or you can buy this mask. Where is their justification in this? There is none, other than the fact that they are the sole makers of masks. You can buy nothing but that I found in ALONA Beach, Chinese masks. There is no other mask that I found. If there was, I couldn't find a label other than China. So they have everybody at a disadvantage because they've took over the manufacturing of almost everything. Now, what don't they manufacture? What do they make in the Philippines? They make sneakers. Sundugo sneakers. And I got to tell you, I've been buying them. I bought more than 14 pairs of Sundugo sneakers since I moved here, but I'll never buy another pair. They only last me 3 months and they fall apart. And then I have to sew the bottoms back on. And there's no guarantee. Well, I bought 3 pairs one day, and then a few days later, I brought back a pair that fell apart. The whole entire bottom of the shoe separated from the canvas bag that your foot goes in. I mean, it just fell off. It just fell apart. It was a bad glue job. It wasn't the bottom of the shoe. It was the entire sole of the shoe, from front to back, just fell off. I was walking and the whole thing, so basically I was just walking in the canvas bag that the shoe was made out of. And I brought it back. I said to the guy, what's up with this? Oh, that was a defect, sir. Did it ever happen before? No, sir. Anyway, they gave me another pair of shoes, but I won't buy another pair of those. So if you want to buy fins, back in 1980, when I was buying fins, Ed and Jean Tiedemann had a dive shop that sold dive gear. The cheapest pair of fins for a decent set of fins was $150. There was 2 companies that made fins, but only one company that made masks, or one country. There were the Chinese fins came from China, and they were about $139 to $145. And then there was Avanti, Avanti, Avanti fins made in Italy. And I bought one pair of Avanti fins. I think it was $150. And they lasted until 2014. Whereas the rubber on the fin, that was a soft black rubber, like a gum rubber to make like a flipper, it just disintegrated. It didn't rip, it didn't fall apart, it didn't separate from the silicone part of the fin. It just disintegrated, like when you leave a plastic bottle out in the sun. So you don't have a choice. So when you walk into a dive shop in the Philippines, you can rest assured that if you put a dive package together here, it's going to cost you about $1,900 for fins, 2 regulators, a good mask, a good snorkel, and a buoyancy compensator and a weight belt. About $1,900. But if you buy that at Divers Direct in Key Largo, that same package is about $1,195. So if you're in the States and you're planning on moving to the Philippines, I would suggest you buy your dive gear at Divers Direct or Divers World. Divers Direct or Divers World. Those are the 2 places that, and now they have good sales on. Those prices, the $1,100 to $1,200, $1,300 for a full package. In 2013, before I left Key Largo, just before September, the summer diving ends like in September. They have a sale, and the sale was about $400. No weight belt, but for the buoyancy compensator, 1 tank, 2 regulators, a mask, a snorkel, and a set of fins was under $500. So basically, prices have doubled since then. So now it's $1,100 for that same setup, but with a weight belt. So what I want to tell you is that you people don't understand. China has taken over the world. And now when I walk through ALONA Beach and I did my walking video, which I have more of, but I haven't published, what I noticed is that when I moved to ALONA Beach, that walking video I did with Phil Rizzuto in it, okay, so I walked basically from the bottom of the road to up to right in front of McDonald's. All those stores that you see, what were there? 75 businesses. When I moved to ALONA Beach in 2000. The money changer was on the corner at the bottom. The hair salon, immediately after the money changer on the left-hand side that I said went out of business, that was being built, that building. It was not built. The dive shop next to the hair salon was built, and that's where I said Dung Dung had his vegetable market. That's three. The next that was open was the Italian restaurant, which is now closed. That's 4. And that was it. There wasn't anything else. You walked up the block, 300 feet, there was a bank. Next to the... No, there was no bank. Yes, there was a bank. There was a bank. Bank, and then next to the bank was Helmut's Bar. That's the corner where McDonald's was. So there were 7 businesses and 1 bank. There were no stores on the left-hand side, and those buildings in the back that I said were Chinese compounds, where they rent out rooms, they were not there either. On the right side, there was a Korean store, which is gone. Where you buy tickets to go on the cruises, like, you know, from the ferries from Bohol to Cebu or wherever. That store was there. And the ALONA Q on the right-hand side, and 1 for the road. There were 4 businesses on the right. And 1 further up the road was a Filipino chicken place. So there were 5 businesses on the right, 7 on the left. All the other stores were vacant lots with trees. Nothing was behind any of the stores. There were no other buildings behind them. Now, 80% of the storefront and the signage is Chinese. Well, they basically took over, or Korean or Japanese. Or, yeah, pretty much those three countries. They took over the Philippines. If you go into the city, if you were privy to know who owned the malls, you would find out that there's 3 malls. There's the Altaurus Mall, which now they have 3 Altaurus malls, the BQ Mall, and the ICM. I will tell you that most of that is owned by Chinese corporations. But either way, they all work with each other. So the biggest mall was the biggest mall in the world, S&M Mall in Cebu. That's the Cube. They call it the Cube Mall because it's basically a Saturn. It's an Illuminati-owned corporation, but the Chinese own the mall. That's pretty much the way it works. The Chinese have taken over Asia, just same way they took over America. And waterfront properties are even more disadvantageous to ownership by Chinese. They own almost every waterfront property. They may not inhabit the waterfront properties. They may rent it out for the time being until they want to put something there. And they may even rent it out at a reasonable rate. Or they may let the Filipinos stay in there for a few years till they get ready to do what they're doing. But they own most of the waterfront. Now, not everybody says Chinese people can't own the property, but the Chinese have some sort of an agreement with the Philippines government, plus their children. Like if you had a Chinese person that moved here 50 years ago and they have children, they were born in the Philippines, they're Filipinos. So they might be run by the parents, but they are owned by Chinese. The hotel I stayed in, the Golden Prince Hotel in Cebu, was Chinese Filipino parents that were probably in their the mother might have been late 60s and the father was in his 70s when I moved into in 2014. The children were Chinese Filipino. They had several hotels, and The adjoining hotels were Chinese Filipino. The money changers, the pawn shops in that whole area, all owned by the same family. So basically, they owned almost a square block. Behind the Golden Prince was the biggest Chinese restaurant I ever saw in my life, Chinese buffet. Probably fit 1,500 to 2,000 people in the buffet around the corner. That's gone. Now it's a Chinese hotel. But everything is being taken over by China. And the way they do it is how I explained it in the beginning of this video. So let's see what somebody has to say. Mr. Willis, I think it looks like. Hold on. John escaped. Sorry. Okay. Carla Darling. How sad the Philippines have had enough problems the last couple of years. Well, no, it's the way of the world. China has been taking over America for the last 50 years. No one noticed. The American politicians sold the American soul to the Chinese a long time ago. And I'm going to give you for instance, and I'm going to tell you this is the truth. And I'm going to tell you, you can go there and see for yourself. So I've mentioned many times that at some point in my life, I would guarantee a child's safety for the parents of the child to escort them from the parent who had parental control. Let's say a mother was given parental control of a child, but the father wanted to see the child. They would refer to me to bring that child from New York to wherever it was in America to the father's house. And then I would get on the plane with the child and I would get a room either adjacent to the child's room in the father's house or in the same room as the child, so that there would be this was in cases where there was problems with the parents. In one case, the parent was a very bad alcoholic. In another case, a drug addict. So basically, I just assured that the child wouldn't see drugs or wouldn't see the father drunk. So in one trip, we went to the Kennedy Space Center in Texas. And every store, every photographic shop, every poster shop, every souvenir shop, every shop that you could buy T-shirts in, every shop you could buy soda or food in, all the shops inside the huge complex called the Kennedy Space Center, where you see the rocket engines and how they work, and every store was owned by Chinese. If you wanted to buy a postcard, you had to buy it from a Chinese store owner. So basically, this is going back to 1983 or 4. I guess it was that far back. It was might have been 1982, but I don't think it was, because by 1985 the guy lived in Texas. By 1983 he lived in Texas. By 1980 he was dead. I haven't heard from him since then, so good chance that he was dead. And I happen to have known that family. I knew the parents. I grew up with the parents. In any event, all of Kennedy Space Center was sold to the Chinese vendors. There was no American or Indian or Pakistani or any other vendor but Chinese in the Kennedy Space Center in 84. Okay. Now in Florida, the state of Florida sold Alligator Alley and the toll roads to the Chinese people back in the 90s, early 90s. Bush did that, I think. Somebody did it. Clinton might have done it. But they took over Alligator Alley and the toll booth. So now when you go on the Florida Turnpike, the toll booths and the roads are maintained by China, and that whatever money they pay rent for the road, but they own it. So when you go along the road, all the stores and all the complexes that they built are all owned by Chinese. Also in Michigan, where I bought my barge from, in Traverse City. And this is going back into 1988. In Traverse City, the Chinese people were buying swaths, like half a mile long swaths of Lake Michigan. The only other competitor for the purchase of property in Michigan on the Great Lakes was DuPont Chemical Company. Dow Chemical Company. I apologize. Dow, D-O-W, the company that is famous for making that blue styrofoam. Dow Chemical, maybe DuPont, but because that's a chemical company too. And that's mostly centered in the Midwest. But Chinese people were buying a half a mile stretches of land at a time. And they didn't have any plans to build anything on it. They were just buying it for future. Now it's built up pretty big. I don't know how it is today, but back in mid 2010 to 12, I was still friends with some of the people I met in 1988, and they said the Chinese are starting to build stuff there, whatever they're building, hotels, restaurants, gas stations, but waterfront property is their specialty. So we have been sold out by the politicians in America since before I got there in 1984, the Texas to the NASA Space Center and Kennedy Space Center. And the same is true in most of the huge government complexes. If you're an American, you can't get a franchise. You have to be disadvantaged minority to get a franchise. And then when they buy it, they get 1% loans, which they probably pay them back 1%. So you're going to pay 13% or 11% or commercial 10.5%, and they pay 1%. That's crazy. That's great, but that's how America has sold out its citizenry. Carlos Durant, how sad. And now I don't know how the banks in the Philippines work with the Chinese, but that's a fact. The way they work with the government works with the Chinese or the minorities. You can buy a business for $1 million at a 1% loan, but if an American wants to buy it, it's 10.5 to 13% as a commercial loan. It's an amazing thing. Hello, Mike. You kind of look like Rambo with that headscarf on. Only Mike could pull that off. Yeah, you know what? Sylvester Stallone and I met at Planet Hollywood on Camelback and 15th in not Flagstaff. What the heck's the name of that? Oh, it's a famous city in Arizona. I spent 3 weeks living there. Camelback and 15th. Phoenix, Arizona. On Camelback and 15th, there was an opening of a Planet Hollywood, and they had a boom truck. I have pictures. I might, if I can find them. I have many pictures, even with like Sylvester Stallone about 4 feet from me. And I had this huge cross on, the one I used to wear when I was Rabbi Chewbacca. And he walked up to me. He was on the boom truck, and then he lowered the boom truck, or somebody else lowered the boom truck to the ground. And he walked up, and he was looking around the crowd. He goes, "Yo, you look just like me." Sylvester Stallone said that to me. And I said, "No, Rock, you look like me." Because, to be honest with you, at that time, I was probably quite a bit bigger than he was from lifting weights. And I'm probably three, and he's not a very tall man. I think he's about 5'5". So I was 5'8". Now I shrunk to about 5'7", but I was probably about 3 inches taller than he was, and I weighed 185 to 190 pounds, and he might have weighed 155 pounds. So I said, no, you look like me. And he just laughed and walked away. And I don't think I had a Rambo hat on, but he did. I had a T-shirt on. I'll see if I could find those pictures and send them to you. Yeah, so that was not the only time I met him. I met him in the city. Him, Al Pacino, and that other piece of garbage that doesn't like Trump. Not that anybody does, but Al Pacino, Sylvester Stallone, and the guy who said F Trump, that guy, they were all at a party my cousin took me to. And plus I had known him from Stallone's bakery and sandwich shop on 123rd Street and Rockaway Boulevard in Queens. His family, Sylvester Stallone's family, owned several eateries where they just sold sandwiches, not only takeout. And I had seen him there quite a few times when we were kids, not as adults so much, but when we were kids. So he kind of, I don't think he remembered me in Arizona. He may have, but I've known him since I was 17. Not known him. I'll tell you one thing about him is he came around the neighborhood. I was not part of this, but he came around Howard Beach asking for $50,000 minimum investment. He was going to buy, I think it was $13 million property in Hawaii and build a hotel on it. And I don't know how much of that $13 million that he got, and then he went bankrupt. He went belly up. He basically scammed people for $10 million. Now, you might be able to find that on the internet, but that I do know he did that for a fact, because everybody that invested, and there were quite a few people that did invest locally, and they all cursed that guy for a long time. He was not the nicest person in the world. Okay, so we have some people. Mr. Willis is... Hello, Mr. Willis. Hope your family is well. All has been good here from John Escape. Yes, it's going okay. As Mr. Willis says, yes, it's going okay here. Still got this pandemic economy crap here. John Escape says, yep, just like the Clintons are the biggest land ownerships in Haiti by any American nice right. By any American nice right. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know much about. I know the Clintons are totally corrupt. So that says John Escape. Clintons own most of the property in Haiti. I wouldn't doubt it for all the crap they did there. Chinese presence in Florida set to grow. All right, so, okay, so now I don't know what John's about to say, but I can tell you that John has, I think if I remember correctly, under his, not direct control, but under his supervision, under his managers, 746 people are directly, John is directly responsible to give instructions to a group of managers where there's 740 people below that. So he has a pretty good handle on what's going on in South Florida. So John says Chinese presence in Florida set to grow. All these indicate that the Chinese share of Florida market is poised for growth, and the Chinese developers have honed in on this, particularly in Miami and waterfront properties. Now, they don't necessarily live in those properties, and now I'm going to tell you a story about my Chinese friend, Peter. Peter, if you're out there, say hello. I will not mention anything too private. So, Peter was my neighbor, and Peter and I had a disagreement back in, I guess, we knew each other from 1977, even before that. Actually, I started working on that block in 1973, but we didn't talk, but we knew who each other was. And then in 1977, we started talking to each other. He was a very, very quiet Chinese man. I didn't even know what he did then. I knew he was a a detective, but I didn't know what kind of detective. And he and I, we got along quite well. And then I moved next door to him, and his dog. Oh my God, he had his dog never stopped barking. And one day we had a disagreement, and this is going back to 1980, and I knew he was a police officer, but I didn't really care. I said, "Let's go to the park," and he looks up at me, he was a little bit more involved than that. And he goes, "I like you. I let you live." And he walked back in the house, and we never had another fight. After that, we were best friends. Because when push comes to shove and you're manly and somebody doesn't back down, and then you have to either laugh it off or you have to, make the move. And Peter looked at me and said, this guy's not going to back down, and this is going to escalate into something that neither one of us wanted. But he goes, "I like you. I like you. I let you live." And he wasn't kidding, because later on I found out just exactly what Peter did for a living. He was a homicide detective for narcotics in Chinatown. Now that's somebody you don't want to fool around with. And he had a nickname called the Turbinator, and I won't tell you why. But Peter, that was funny. Okay, so Peter, how you doing? I know he watches my videos. He might even be there. You still are Rabbi Jubaka. Stay safe, brother. Louis Pagan Punch. Thank you, Louis. Thank you very much. I am a rabbi. Wait, Mr. Obama, come over here. Who loves you, Mr. Rabbi? Jubaka loves you, baby. So, you know that one of the things I do is on Christmas and De Niro. That's right, Robert De Niro. That guy. So when I was at my cousin's house, Gary, Gary Swanson, Swanson, Gary Swanson. He was born in Oceanside, Long Island, or the immediate town next to Oceanside. He was my dad's and his father were cousins, so I guess that made us second cousins. Gary used to take me to all kinds of freaking parties, man. And I remember going to these parties because they were all in lofts in Manhattan. And I didn't know who I was meeting. So you would see a lot of famous people, but they wouldn't talk to you. They would say, "Hello, hi, how you doing? My name is," and now I'm a contractor. And they said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a carpenter." And they'd just walk away. They wouldn't say goodbye or nothing like that. They were very uppity. They were at those parties to do business, to get TV commercials or spots in plays or movies or stuff like that. So Stallone, what was that? De Niro and Al Pacino, they were together. This was going back 1974. Right after I got out of high school, Gary and I started hanging out with each other. He was in that soap opera, Days of Our Lives, I think it was. And now he teaches, I think it's English literature and acting on stage acting in one of the universities. He probably is retired by now, but he brought me to a lot of cool parties. So, yeah. Thank you for telling me who that was. I forget. I don't like him, so I forget his name. Okay, John, thank you for stopping by. I did get your email. Send your regards to my friend. That was terrible. I watched that. I was like, wow. I mean, that was just terrible what happened to that man and his family. Send my regards to him and his wife, please. I hope his dog was okay. I was just freaking terrible. Bill James. So very interesting. So getting back, let me go back to my notes. I want to tell you, there's nothing that's new here in the Philippines. So in the beginning of this dissertation, I explained to you how the Chinese men build faster, smarter, stronger too, by the way. The foundations were bigger and stronger in every way. And the Filipinos mixed the cement by hand. And the Chinese people brought in the pump trucks with booms that went up, like the boom truck that poured the fourth floor, and the columns for the fourth floor and the deck for the fourth floor. That's 54 feet to the deck of the fourth floor. Then you have 12 feet, 10 and a half feet of columns, and then another 7 inches of roof. So that's like 11 feet, and 54 is 65 feet. And then the boom, the stinger on the boom is 30 feet long. So now you're going up 80 feet. And the boom trucks were going up over the top of the columns. So they had to be up 130 to 140 feet to get to the closest column. But to get to the more distant columns, they were probably close to 165 feet. These were the biggest. I have videos of this. I don't know. I probably didn't make those public because they weren't really that interesting. But some of those boom trucks do go up, have a reach of 175 feet from the center pin, from the turret of the truck. And so the Chinese people would pump. They don't have 13 yard concrete trucks here in the Philippines. They have 6, and I think they have 11 yard concrete trucks. Now, maybe they have bigger trucks now, but then the big truck was 11 yards, and they used what we call P-rock, whereas the Filipino people use 3/4 inch stone, and they would mix it by hand. So they would have to bring up 27 cubic feet. They'd have to bring up 50 bags of rock and sand to make 1 cubic yard. Then they'd bring that up a staircase. The Chinese people had a 5,000-pound lift if they wanted to move stuff up to the top of the building that went up 7 stories, but they only had 5 stories hooked up. And when they pumped, they could pump like the 4th floor in the front section where I do have the video. Pump 10, where they'd empty out that 11-yard truck in a half an hour, 45 minutes, and they could pump 100 yards of concrete up 4 stories in just a matter of a few hours. So where it would take months for the Filipino people to get up to the 4th floor. So they do everything different. I'm telling you, they're more efficient. Even I'm not a concrete mason. I am pretty good at laying block, or I was. I'm very good at stucco. That I'm very damn good at. Always was. Just had a knack for stucco. When I show you how the Filipinos do stucco with the plop, plop, fizz, fizz, or what a relief it is, that's the way they do their stucco work. But when I was that man's age that I was talking about, typically with Joey Sanfilippo, his real name was Joey Sanfilippo, but I called him Joey Sanfilippo. He was my laborer, or Ronnie Call was my laborer, or Johnny Mac, the hardest working man in the universe, was my laborer. With those guys tendering my stucco, mixing it by hand in a mortar pan, I could put on somewhere between 5 and 7 squares a day on block. So that's 700 square feet on level ground. So first of all, I didn't have dirt underneath my feet. I didn't have what I call the Appalachian Mountains underneath my feet in one of those videos. And it was a broom swept concrete patio or deck. And I would do the stucco with a 12-inch float, 12-inch trowel. And then I had sponge floats, not rubber floats. I used a sponge float because you could put water on the sponge float, which eliminates splashing water on the wall. They wear out real quick. So, but I would do between 500 and 700 square feet of stucco in one day, but I never touched a hoe or the mortar pan. I didn't reset the height of the mortar, the real mortar pan that they put the mortar in, and I never touched the scaffolding. Those guys did everything for me in front of me or behind me. They disassemble and assemble, or I'd have it assembled and we just slide it over to the wall. But I only did stucco. So when you see the Filipino people working here, that's how they do it. That's how it's always been done since I got here. But if they have to do it like that because the walls are not plumb when they start out, which is okay. That's the way they work. But my walls would be plumb, and I had like a fruit sprayer that I kept watering, and before I got to the wall, I sprayed it down, or a hose, depends on where I was working, and I sprayed the wall down with water, and inside that water there was some Acryl 60, which is a bonding, emulsifies the concrete to the block, bonds it. So my stucco work is still there that I did in 1973. I started doing stucco jobs, and my stucco work is still on those houses. None of it ever cracked. Hairline cracks, yeah, but nothing ever fell off, blistered. I know that for a fact because I took a walk around the neighborhood when I was back in 2019, and my designs were still on my garage, my house, my neighbor's house around the corner, and my neighbor's house down the block, all my original design. So I know that my stucco jobs lasted years because I've been doing this since 73. Well, I did it for Irving Klein since I started working for him when I was about 7 years old. And he taught me a lot about masonry and stucco. Irving was a cool guy. Let's go back to the notes. Louis Pagan Ponce, the one video you made years ago that left an impression on me, where the locals were making 2x4s freehand with the chainsaw. Great skills. Yeah. That was on the beach. Yeah. You know, that's still how they make the wood here, Louis. That's still, on any given day, you can ride down, well, that's how they make the wood. They don't have someone, I know some guy said that he was I'm going to bring a lumber mill to the Philippines and I'm going to show them how to make 2x4s. No, you're not. They're not going to. First of all, to bring a lumber mill into the Philippines, one of those giant bands, so first of all, it's 100% import fee. Bring anything from America. So the lumber mill itself, let's say it's $23,000 for a decent one, 23 to 28,000, and then double that because you're going to pay 100% import fee. That's 56,000, and now you have to get a cargo container that's going to cost you about $7,000 minimum. So 56 and 7 is 63,000. And now you have to be in the Philippines to pick it up. So add another $5,000 to that, and you're looking at $78,000 if you come by yourself. You're not bringing any lumber mill, not a decent one from America. And even if you were bringing it in from China, you still have to pay 75% import fee, and you still have to be there at the customs dock. And in addition to that, you personally have to hire a customs broker. Now, let me tell you why you have to be at the dock. When I brought containers in from America, you had to be at the dock so that if customs decided to make you open up the container, if there was something in the container that they didn't like, you're going to jail. So you have to be there when the container is open, number one. Number two, you have to hire a customs broker. So a customs broker to bring any container, it doesn't matter what's in the container, is about $2,000. So add to the 78, add $2,000 for the customs broker. That's $80,000 with your hotel and everything like that. And now you have to put it someplace, right? So you need to rent a place to put it. So it costs you about $90,000 to bring a decent lumber mill in. And all you're going to do is put coconut trees in it. And you're not going to make any money for years. You know, you're not going to. And not only that, you'd be lucky if the Filipino people buy the lumber from you. They don't buy stuff from foreigners so easy. So that job that Louis Paganpunts is talking about was on a beach. And let me tell you something, Louis. Okay, so I was living on a beach in ALONA Beach. And all day long, all you hear is chainsaws. Now, I just moved from America and I owned a tree service and landscaping and land clearing business. And every hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, depends. You see another tree drop. These trees were 70 feet high, 70 feet tall. And I would go out to the beach and they'd cut them, drop them, and within 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I mean, these trees had coconuts on them for years and years, but there were people that climbed up to get the coconuts off of them too. But typically, they would just drop the tree. The coconuts would fly in every direction when the tree hit the ground. And within a minute and a half, all the coconuts would be gathered up by the locals to use for one reason or another. And some of them took the palm fronds as well, but not a lot. So they'd lop off the head of the coconut tree, and then they'd go to work on skinning it, cutting 2x4s. Well, about a month went by, and I said I was making videos. I made several. Some of them I never even made public. So I said to one of the guys, what are you doing with that lumber? And he said, the barangay captain is building a house. So what that meant was that the barangay captain was okaying the destruction or cutting of, I guess they cut down 60 trees. And big, these were all 60. Now, in a way, it was good because those coconuts would fall from 60 feet. And everybody knows that 20 people a year die from coconut poisoning in America. God knows how many in the Philippines. There's tree stands of coconuts. You're on a bicycle path and you go and you look up and the trees are 70 feet, 80 feet, 60 feet tall. And they're full of coconuts. There's coconuts all over the ground. There's palm fronds all over the ground. You go, this is a minefield, but from above. I mean, if you had a 10-pound coconut falls on your head, you're dead. You're going to die right there or cripple you for life. So anyway, that guy said that this is a barangay captain. So I said, what's the name of the captain? And I wanted to go see the house that they were using. Oh, no, don't worry about it. Well, they cut down all the trees, and then I don't know how much longer it was, but my landlord was building something, and he had to have an inspector come to his job. They were building 2 more rental units on the property, and the inspector went down to the beach. He said, "Who cut all of those trees?" Now, these guys were there for 6 weeks, cutting down trees every day for 6 weeks. Nobody said a word. No, I didn't. I didn't care. It weren't my trees. And there wasn't a person on the block, not a fisherman on the beach. Nobody would tell the inspector who cut the trees down. And when he came to my landlord's house, which they cut trees right behind his house, but 75, 80 feet away. Because I didn't even know they cut the trees, in German accent. And he was a trip. And he goes, nobody was telling who took the trees. So they took 50, 60, 75 coconut trees, whatever it was. They cleared the whole beach, the entire beach, nothing. They didn't even leave. They left trees that were 20, 30 feet tall. But all the old growth, they cut them down. Not only did they cut them down, they didn't replant anything new. And they left, and I don't know why, but when they cut the stumps, they left the stumps with like a V-shaped notch. I know why they did the V-shaped notch, to drop the tree in directional drop, but they left those there. They didn't even cut them down flat so you could put a table or something on. They left what a mess they left. They just left a mess. They were cutting down trees and making lumber. They took all the skin stuff, Lewis, and they sold, I don't know, I guess they put that stuff in a lumberyard. And that's where it went. So of all those trees for 6 weeks, all the neighbors, all the boat people, all the people that went fishing off the beach, nobody knew who cut the trees down. Nobody. They would come in a big truck at night or in the morning or in the afternoon and load up whatever they had cut. But they still do it like that today, Lewis, Pagan Pines. They still cut the trees down and make the 2x4s the same way. If I go to a lumberyard, you're still going to see the rough sawn lumber. However, about a year ago, a lumber company is starting to take the rough sawn 2x2s, which are really 2 3/8 by 2 3/8, and mill them down. They did. Somebody brought a mill in from somewhere, but now what was 2 3/8 by 2 3/8, they're milling them down to about 1.5 inches to 1.5 inches, but perfectly square. The lengths are 8 feet, half inch, 8 foot, a quarter inch, 8 foot, 1 inch, 8 foot, 2 inches. But the squareness of, so you still have to cut both ends. And so now they have time for my water. Get back up there. Get back up there. I gotta get some water. Not only do real men go scuba diving with Mr. Obama. You'll see that in my next video. Real men go scuba diving with Mr. Obama on their 65th birthday. Real men. That's what real men do. They don't sit around the house all day and eating with people they don't even know. How many people have had a birthday party? And the people that show up at the birthday party, you don't even know who they are. And, they basically came for the party, which is what a party is for. But I would much prefer to spend my time and my money on doing something I enjoy. So Christmas and my birthday, either the day before or the day after or the day of, I like to spend underwater. It's just a little treat that I do. Did they find who cut the cheese? LOL. No, nobody will ever know who cut the cheese. By the way, cheese is on sale here in the Philippines. We are cheesed up. So, real men, as you well know, go diving with Mr. Obama on their 65th birthday, because that's what real men do. They do real men things, and real men don't sip water. So let's go right over to my water bottle. I'll do my daily little routine with my water bottle. Oh, this is a big one. This is not a 700. This is an 800. So here we got water in the bottle there. Watch the bubble go up to the top. Men, real men take a deep breath. Real men don't sip water. Real men drink water by the bottle. Ready? And here we go. Ah, I feel much better now. Real men drink water by the bottle. Real men don't sip. Except Steve Montallo. He's my friend. He's a real man. If you're my friend and you sip, you're a real man. But other than that, if you're not my friend and you sip, you're not a real man. Okay, so let me go back to my notes. Yeah, Lewis, they still cut wood. And my plan is within the next few weeks, I'm going to go to, I'm going to do the entire ALONA Beach area, everything. Now, I counted about 60 videos of ALONA Beach going back to 2014, in April of 2014. So the area that I showed you in my videos where the beach was eroded and the trees were falling into the ocean, I found a video, and I told you the shop there that was boarded up with the white boards. I told you it was once a restaurant that the guy tried to rent me. What a scam that was. Boy, that guy tried to scam me. He said, I'll rent you this restaurant for 50,000 pesos a month. But you have to sign a 10-year agreement where if you break the lease, you have to pay the lease in full. So, what are you, stupid? Not me, because I'm nuts. Are you stupid? Why? He goes, why? Why would I sign a lease like that? He goes, no, it's a good deal. Look at all the people here. I'm going, so you want me to sign a lease agreement where I will have to give you what? $130,000 if I break the lease? Why would I do that? You make a lot of money here. You make a lot of money. And I bought some fried butterfish. They were 20 pesos a piece. He made those pretty good. And the name of the place was Carl's Coffee. Carl's, Karls, Carl's Coffee. And at that time, there were tables and chairs. We'll call it the walk path is 10 feet wide. There were tables and chairs on the ocean side of the walk path going towards the ocean about, past the tree line, at least 15 feet. And then there was 60 feet of beach at that location. Now there's no beach at all at high tide, nothing. And the trees are all falling in the water. So the land eroded back 15 feet and the beach eroded 60 feet. So anyway, I told this Filipino man, I'm not interested in renting. Oh, you gotta, this is a business for you. You look like a restaurant. I don't want to own a restaurant. Now, I don't want to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work till 10 o'clock at night. I know what the restaurant business is. So whenever I went there every night, I walked past his store. So going from the bottom of the concrete road, and when you make the turn, there was nothing. It was an empty, kind of like an empty lot. And then there was this Carl's Coffee. Then it became a Jamaican bar, and then now it's a Jamaican tattoo parlor. where the Jamaican men do also the fire dancing, where the Zumba is, and they used to do it on the beach, but that's illegal now. So anyway, 3 months later, already the ordinance was already in play. There was an ordinance coming that you couldn't put tables and chairs on the ocean side of the road. So he might have had about 15 or 20 tables and chairs. He had a juice stand there. You're going to see 5 Filipinas, because I'm going to post that video specifically to show you the difference of what it looked like and what it is now on ALONA Beach. So in the ALONA Beach video, the girls knew I was new to the country. And off the video, before I turned on the camera, they were all very friendly. The men, the restaurant, the boys that cook, the girls that cook, the girls that serve the juice bar. I mean, if you buy something from them, that's their job, to be friendly. So when I was buying a juice before I made the video, and I think I used the Canon H20, G20, because it had the zoom in, zoom out lens on it. And that's what I was using at the time. Well, one of the girls was like upset with me. And the reason she was upset with me was because I wouldn't buy her a pocketbook for like 1,800 pesos that they sold on the beach. Now, it was her store that sold, it was that restaurant store that sold souvenirs, and one of the pocketbooks was 1,800 pesos, which at the time would have been about 1,800 about $44. But I only just met the girl that day. You know, I was just talking to her. I bought a juice. Well, she got pissed off. What do you won't buy me a pocketbook? Why not? And I'm going, well, I don't even know you. Why would I buy you a pocketbook? Because you have mahal money. I'm going, I didn't know what mahal meant. I couldn't even say bakakram. I couldn't even say tambok. I thought she was saying sambok with an S-A-M-B-O-K. Anyway, she was serious. She got mad at me. Well, she appeared to be mad. She probably wasn't mad. But she wanted a pocketbook. She's going, I want that pocketbook, and you're not going to buy that pocketbook. As soon as I put the video on, she clammed up about the pocketbook. But I did mention it. But anyway, all that land is gone. Now the trees are just hanging. One more good storm, and those big, beautiful trees will be in the ocean. So I'll make a segment that I'll call Carl's, maybe Carl's 2. No beach, and I'll have the first one I saw the other day. It's called ALONA Beach, but it shows you the sign, Carl's Coffee. They sold ice cream, they sold hamburgers. I would stop in there to eat like a quick lunch or a dinner. Nothing fancy, just, you know, hamburgers and fries and ice cream. But at night, they set it up nice with a juice bar and everything. In the daytime, too, but at night, it was real pretty. Had lights on. But now it's all gone. And I'm going to show you how many stores. I'm going to walk past the stores that don't say Chinese owned, and I'm going to point them out. If I know them to be owned by Chinese people, I'll point it out. But I'm going to walk, when I walk from McDonald's to the beach, I'm going to tell you that they took their signs down. But I remember which stores were Chinese for the most part. The Italian restaurant is still owned by Italians and doesn't have Chinese signage. But the Outback, that had been owned by, I think it was an Australian man. When the first guy, that was great food. I think the second man, Mike, was Australian too. The food sucked. And then I don't know who bought it after that, but Chinese signage went up under their sign, and it could have been for advertising, but could have been not. Now, we'll tell you that next to the Outback, oh, God, you want to talk about Chinese people having money? and Japanese people having money. So next to the Outback, when you go to the Zumba Center in the back, they sold live lobster, live crabs, live Dungeness crabs, live eels, live clams, live razor clams. And they sold that product for about, the lobster, no claws, were 3,000 pesos per kilo. I have a lot of videos of that. And lobsters with claws, about a kilometer away, were $100 a kilo. So that was a big, big Chinese restaurant. But next to the Outback going up towards McDonald's was a Japanese restaurant where the appetizers started at 700 pesos for 3 baked clams. I swear to God. 700 pesos for 3 shrimp. I don't know what they tasted like. And the entrees started at 1,300 pesos, and you didn't get a lot of food. So I met a guy named Max, a black guy. I was coming out of the Outback, and I was walking through the Outback. I was going to the Zumba to go see Daisy. And this black guy grabs me by the arm, and I turn around and look at him. He goes, "Mike, how you doing?" And I'm going, I don't know who you are. I thought maybe I knew him from New York. "Mike, it's Max." And I'm, dude, I don't know who you are. I have no idea who you are. "Max, I leave Maximus. I'm going, "Max, you're black." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm black. I was born black." And we started laughing, and we started talking, and Daisy came right along after that. She was probably on her way back from Zumba. And he had some foods, some snacks, and we talked there for about 40 minutes. And then he goes, "Come on, I'm going to take you out to dinner." And I said, "Where you want to go?" He goes, "Next door, there's a Japanese restaurant." I said, "Max, you're not taking me to no Japanese restaurant." He goes, "Yeah, I'm taking you for Japanese food. I want to have Japanese food." Maximus. I said, "Before you, his last name was not Maximus, but I'm not going to tell you his real name. But his name was Max, and he was black, and he was from Australia, and he was from this little oddball island in Australia." So anyway, I'm going to end this live stream in about 13 minutes. So it's in 13 minutes, I'm going to end this live stream. It'll be 2 hours. Yeah, it'll be 2 hours. So anyway, so Max and I, and then the girls, we went next door, and I said, the Filipinos, they are at the front handing out the menus. I said, "Max, read the menu." And he reads the menu. He goes, like the 1,300 pesos was the cheapest meal in there. So he would have had to spend 6,000 pesos about, or $150 if you bought a drink, because he drank. He had a few beers, and his girlfriend had a beer. So he was going to spend 100. Max, come on, let's go. We go to Payag. I said, for 200 pesos, you get a better meal, unlimited rice, nice atmosphere, and I'll show you where there's the best Filipino restaurant in ALONA Beach is Payag. And by the way, I went into the Payag, for those of you who live in the ALONA Beach area. I went into Payag in the ICM Mall Tuesday morning. And I walked in and I saw the same people that were in there when they started the business 3 years ago. And I spoke with the manager, and the manager said the Payag in ALONA Beach is not closed and has not been sold, and it will reopen when ALONA Beach reopens. Even though it's closed, signs down, canvases down. They didn't want anything in front of the building that could get stolen. So they just took everything. They took the canopy down. They took it all down. And the flower pots, they just ripped the flowers out, or somebody took them. And the flower pots are there upside down, just with the dirt on the deck, with the steel roll-down gates. But Payaga's going to open up. I thought Jollibee's and McDonald's put them out of business, but no, they did not. Tomorrow, I'm doing a live stream, by the way. Yes. Yes, I do. The ancient aliens on the dollar bill video was interesting. Yeah. Oh, that definitely was not done by man. Nothing man-like or human-like. The book is on my homepage. If you're interested in buying that book, it's an ebook. It's $3.99, I think, or $2.99. Amazon changes the price sometimes, but it's less than $4. You just click the button, brings you right to the Amazon site, and you can buy it with your credit card. It's a 23 megabyte download, so you're going to have mail that will accept 23 megabytes. Yahoo is good, but I mean, I don't know any that does not now, but years ago it was some email, some browsers wouldn't take that size download, but either way, yeah, it's $3.99. Go to my homepage, go underneath the eagle and click Angels on the Ark. In fact, I actually sold. No, I only sold 2 books this week, but I sold 12 books this month, the month of September, 12 books. So that's not so bad. That's a little bit of passive income. I think I make 17 or 18 cents per book, maybe a little more than that, but not much. Oh, when you read the book and you see what's in the book, Kimikaze, you'll see that it wasn't possible to do by humans. I actually think that the entities, let's just call them entities, are godlike to us. And I actually think they control everything, including the government, including the Illuminati, including the Vatican, including the banking industry. Although the different nationalities put on facades to run the world, there is something much more powerful behind all of it. The only real common denominator that goes back throughout time is that they've always run this world. And when I say always run this world, and the world is flat, by the way, in case I didn't say it enough for the last, I say it every day because the world's flat. Water seeks its own level, and nothing is going to change the physics of the universe. Water, liquids, if undisturbed, seek their own level, and the oceans stay level for thousands of miles. Anyway, I say that these people that created the dollar bill also wrote the Bible. And I say they have controlled this world for billions, not millions of years. You can believe what you want. Something a lot more ancient and older than anything we could comprehend. Because if you go back 50,000 years, there are temples or monuments built on mountains several hundred feet high, and the rocks are fit together like with laser precision. And there's some of the rocks weigh between 700 and 1,200 tons, and they're cut in oddball shapes. Now, these are just rocks lifted up from a quarry from miles away, lifted up 200 feet. Then they weigh 1,000 tons, not 1,200 tons. The biggest crane in the whole damn world now, today. I was watching a video on this crane. The biggest crane that we own today on Earth can pick up 1,200 tons, but it can only pick it up 100 feet. So how did they get 1,200 ton rocks up on 300-foot cliffs? And they still have to get the rock there, cut the rock, quarry the rock, haul the rock, and that rock would have to be hauled on a transport with rubber wheels, the way they transport the space shuttle launch, where it weighs, how it's on, there's like 1,000 rubber wheels, and they all hold a certain amount of weight, and they all turn on hydraulic turrets and stuff like that. Well, these rocks had to be quarried from a half a mile to a mile away, and they weighed 1,200 tons, and they're 50,000 years they've been up on the side of that hill. We can't do that today. I mean, if we could, it would be monumental effort at no monetary gain, and yet they did it with ease 50,000 years ago. So human beings did not do that. Now, I don't know if Simulacron is here. I want to say hello to Simulacron. Shifting gears. I've been trying to send $10 from debit card, password entered wrong 5 times. So, no, it's going to take 5 hours. Don't worry about it, Shifting Gears. Thank you for the thought. Did they find out did they find out who cut the cheese? LOL. No, they didn't do that. So, Shifting Gears, thanks very much. And maybe another time, because I'm going to end the live stream in about 3 minutes. So I appreciate the thought. Let's see what else. Let me go back to my notes, see if there's anything else. But thank you very much for stopping by, and thanks for the comment. Let's see. 100%. Oh, yeah, he's into the Philippines. If you're bringing it from America, it's 100%. So let's say, and I was going to buy a Kruger Signet 3 with the 100 horse turbo Rotax engine. My cost was $69,000 in 2013. The import fee was $69,000 plus shipping, which was $7,000. So we had 69 and 69 is 138, and 7 for the shipping. So that plane was going to cost me $145,000 to get here. And I just said, well, although I have the money to do that, I don't have a pilot's license in the Philippines, which would have been possible to get, but I would have had to hire a company to train me how to fly my plane. And when I looked into the way, I got to tell you, the Philippines is a lot of things, but organized when it comes to flying, private flying and marking where there are power lines and stuff like that, probably less coordinated than buoy markers, which there are none to enter a channel. You either know how to get into the channel, or you run on the rocks here in the Philippines. You don't see buoys, you don't see buoy markers, you don't see channel markers, and they have no understanding at all of red and green buoys in the Philippines. Now, there are now, but in the beginning when I got here, they were just sticks, piles driven in with triangular. There was no lighted buoys with battery and solar and stuff like that. We had them in America, and they could have bought them here, but they just didn't have the money for that stuff. Now in Cebu, you'll see red and green, and even in the port of Bohol, you'll see red and green buoy markers. channel markers. You can tell the difference between channel markers, buoy markers. One flashes. I mean, you got to have a map, though. You got to have a map. And the map will tell you 3-second flashing light means that it's the entrance to this channel and so on and so forth. It's just a question of stuff that you learn when you become a captain or a pilot. But they don't have very good skill sets when it comes to marking. Like, you'll be on the beach coming back from Ballock to Sarg Island, right? And it's high tide. You know it's high tide because you can see it on the shoreline. And you're at high tide, so theoretically, the chart you're reading says 7 feet of water, but that's not true. There are rocks that are only either breaking the surface or 6 inches below the surface. And if you don't know where those rocks are, the boat runs aground and it sinks. It runs onto the rock and it sinks. Now, I was with somebody yesterday. My friends know this man, Jimmy, and he's training to, he's a Filipino man. He's training to be a DNR officer in the DNR. And I talked to him about buoys and markers and stuff like that, because the DNR covers land management, forestry, fires, and some shoreline and lake areas. Oh, yeah, we're give a thumbs up. They don't have very good markers here in the Philippines. All right, so what am I going to do? So I'm going to do that walkabout next week, and I'm going to mention each store that's owned by, and I'm going to walk up and down every alley that I can, and every, go in the back and show you the inexpensive hotels rooms that you can get in Alona Beach. I was 500 pesos just a few hundred meters from the beach. Now, they were not very nice places to stay. This is back in 2014. I was staying at a beautiful resort with a pool right on Alona Beach itself, and I had a deal for 1,000 pesos a day. But just a few hundred meters away, if you knew where to go, there would be a house in the back of a business down a dirt path through a small forest you could get for 500 pesos a day. I'm going to show you some of those places. Okay, that's it. I'm done. That's it. So I'm going to walk up and down every block from Giuseppe's down to Alona Beach, make a right at Kona's Corner, and go up the road about a half a kilometer, maybe 1 kilometer. And then there's a fork in the road. And then I'm going to turn around. Now, I also want to tell you something else. There's the construction industry in the Philippines has come to almost a standstill. Yet, even with the situation that's going on right now, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of rooms that are still being constructed, and hotels that have not stopped building, both in the city and in the province. Yesterday, I counted roughly 1,400 rooms that were being built on, God knows how many complexes, but I just gave it a rough estimate. There's a place called Crossroads, for instance. Crossroads is in Panglao. And I took that way. I made a habit to, I took about 3 years ago, I took a video of the left side of the road from Alona Beach, the long way around to Tagbilaran City. And then the next time I went to Tagbilaran from Alona, I took the left side. So I got the right side, just hold the camera on the right side and the left side. Well, yesterday I went past that one of those stores that was called the Crossroads, Crossroads, Crossroads. And now that was just a little teeny bar with like 2 rooms next to it. And since this freaking disaster happened in the Philippines, those properties go back about, looks like 300 feet off the road. They built, I don't know, 20 units on the left-hand side of the property going towards the back of the road and 20 on the right. And this is with no money coming in. So that bar must have made a lot of money. Or somebody's investing heavily, or somebody bought the business and is investing heavily. And right next to that, not so far away, is another business called 2020, which I guess that's the year they planned on opening in 2020. They're building 35 rooms, it looks like. So that's 75 rooms right next door to each other, small rooms. Another complex in ALONA Beach that did not stop is upwards of 300 rooms. So that's 400 rooms, roughly 400 rooms from just 3 places that I have in my head. But I do know from taking a jeepney in another direction last week to go talk to somebody about buying something, that area there, I took a tricycle actually that day, and that area there, I would say 1,000 rooms on a 7-mile stretch of land. 1,000 rooms, easy. You could count 1,000. That's only what you could see from the street. So that's 2,000. The plan in 2014, from everything that you see from McDonald's to the Hennon, there may have been 20 shops, maybe, open at that time. Now there's 400. However, the plan was to build 14,000 rooms before the year 2020, and they built those. Those are done, and they're still building. I don't know where the people are going to go on the beach. I have no idea. They destroyed the reef outside on the beach. The reef is dead. The diving video I did on my birthday was cool to go underwater. But if you think that's a reef, that's a dead reef. Unfortunately, that's a dead reef. No fish, even though nobody's fished off that reef in 9 months. No fishing allowed. There was a small school of yellowfin snappers, yellowtail snappers, where I took Mr. Obama and I made Mr. Obama sleep with the fish. I mean, swim with the fish. I took him and I let him float. You know, like he's a big floater, Mr. Obama is. I took him and made him float next to the fish. And basically looked like he was floating and swimming. Mr. Obama was swimming with the fish, baby. I made Mr. Obama swim underwater in about 5 meters of water with the fish. And then I put Mr. Obama on fire coral. I did that. Fire coral. If you know what fire coral is, you know. And he was jiving after that. After he was sitting on the fire coral, he was dancing, and I think I heard him complaining, but underwater it's hard to hear. So I don't know if he enjoyed sitting on the fire coral or he just was dancing with the fish. Maybe he thought the fish were dancing because they were swimming. But Mr. Obama, I took Mr. Obama diving many times. Mr. Obama and I like to go diving together as often as possible. He's a good swimmer too, man. And the good thing about Mr. Obama, he could hold his breath for hours. I took him down 41-minute dives twice. Both downtime was 41 minutes. Mr. Obama could hold his breath for 41 minutes. He's an amazing man, Mr. Obama, right? That's right, Michael. Yeah, they like that. No. How come? Fire coral. You like the fire coral? No. Makes me itchy. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. We're going to end this show. God day to everybody from Mr. Obama. Digger 2.0. Now, tomorrow's show, we're going to do something really, really special. Going to have Digger come on. Digger's going to do some things tomorrow. We're going to do some really special things. Things that you didn't think Digger could do, he's going to do. And he's going to do a presentation. Also, he's going to have a lot to say. Well, I mean, that's if I let him talk. I might just not, I might put him over to the side, put him in the corner. Sometimes that's where he belongs, in the corner. So what is Digger exactly? Digger is a gnome from the bottom of the flat earth. And these boots are really not just red boots. They're anti-gravity boots. And the light is what absorbs the energy from being upside down on the bottom of the flat earth. And if he digs a hole too far, we can pull him out with his little chain from the top of the bottom. But mostly we keep Digger tied up with chains, because if you let Digger loose, he has a tendency to dig holes anywhere. And whenever he gets free, he's a digging. That's why this is Digger 2.0. Tomorrow, I got news for you. We're bringing in the big guns tomorrow. We might bring in Digger 3.0. We might. I got Digger 3.0 all hooked up, ready to go. I don't know that tomorrow I'll present Digger 3.0, but Digger 3.0 will make a guest appearance within the next few weeks for sure. I guarantee you. I could. No, I can't. I got to go outside and get him. But he's waiting. He's waiting to do a special guest appearance on the top of the bottom of the flat earth, baby. And you know the top of the bottom of the flat earth is real, because I said it is. And Digger, he comes from the bottom of the flat earth. He wasn't born there. He was born on an island in Southeast Asia, an island, and he was imported. But now Digger goes everywhere. Digger has made holes from here. He's dug holes in Australia. He's dug holes in Tagbilaran City. He's dug holes on the White House lawn. He's dug holes at New York City University. He's dug holes at the football stadium, at Yale football stadium. He's been everywhere. He's a very prolific digger. He's been digging and digging and digging. He's very good at it too. See that spoon? The spoon is his trademark. He can use that spoon in multitudes, or he can eat with that spoon, or he can dig. So we brought Digger to the White House with Mr. Obama a few months ago. And what happened was Digger was at the White House with Mr. Obama, and the secreting service took the chains off Digger, and he was good. He sat down for a little while. And as soon as the secreting service left the presence of Digger, he started digging holes in the White House lawn. So then what he did to get away from them, he tunneled his way back to the Philippines, to the Little Red Door in Tagbilaran City, and he's been hiding here ever since. Right, Digger? Oh, don't tell everybody. Mr. Obama, what are you going to do? We're going to bring him back to America. He owes me money. All right, so that's the story. You might see that story tomorrow. You might not. But for now, Digger, Mr. Obama, and Rabbi Jew Barker say God day to everybody. From the Philippines, baby. I'm being Permy. But,
whoa, look at my shoes.
Look at my shoes. Hey, Al, how are you? Doing well, thank you. I'm doing good. I don't know that I would probably put a video of that up. I do have a video of that, though. How much is it worth to you? Is it worth $100? Send me $100 and we'll talk about it. I think that I deserve that, considering the amount of time that it would take. Flying Circus, thumbs up. Flying Circus, more. Flying Circus says more than 100. That's more than 100. How much more than 100, Flying Circus? What would it be worth? I remember Al Cortines. You're the pilot. I remember you. I don't think I have a bed. I haven't seen you in a few years. But from one pilot to the other, send me some money. Hey, nice seeing you again, Al. Have a nice day. Mike, the living space, the space is well used. Everything, every nook and cranny that I needed to do whatever I needed to do with is all pretty much organized. I mean, I have a lot of stuff here, a lot of unnecessary stuff as well. But I'm not going to show you my living space. Let me see a living video of your living space. Maybe we should do that. Let's do that first. Let's see Al Cortines, who's been a subscriber of mine for 8 years. Let's see your workshop and your house and your living room and where you cook and everything like that. How's that sound, Al? You do one for me and I'll do one for you. Okay? And I think that's reasonable. Have a nice day. I'm being permy. I know who you are. I mean, if you're the Al Cortines, that's the pilot. Are you? Are you that person? Yeah, let's see your living space. I'm being permy, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye for now. Shifting gears, thanks again. And everybody else. How many viewers share birthdays with me?